You can't afford a house because homes cost $400,000. That's what they tell you. That's the narrative. You're locked out of the American dream because you can't compete with cash buyers and corporations. But what if I told you there are towns in America where houses cost less than a Honda Accord? Not condos, not lots, actual three-bedroom houses with roofs and addresses for $4,900, $9,000, $12,000, $20,000. Today we're looking at 15 specific towns in Arkansas. Real places with real listings. We're going to see what you actually get for these prices, why these houses are this cheap, and what happens when an entire housing market operates in reverse. This isn't a hidden gem story. This is an economic autopsy. While the rest of America screams about a housing shortage, these towns have a different problem. Too many houses, not enough people who want them. Let's start with the cheapest. Helena-West Helena sits on the Mississippi River in Phillips County. Population around 10,000, down from 17,000 20 years ago. It's one of Arkansas's most historically significant cities. Riverport, blues, music heritage, the King Biscuit Festival. Median home price, $47,066. But medians don't tell the story. Individual homes are listed starting at $1,495, $1,500 for a house. You'll find single-family homes from the 1940s through 1970s. Some are maintained by longtime residents. Others have sat empty as younger generations left for Little Rock, Memphis, somewhere with jobs. The Delta's economy ran on cotton. Mechanization killed that. What used to take 1,000 workers now takes 10 and a harvester. The jobs disappeared. The people followed. Helena-West Helena has infrastructure most towns this cheap don't have. Schools, a hospital, cultural institutions. But infrastructure without economic activity is just buildings waiting. This town offers something: history, community, ownership at prices that erase debt. What it doesn't offer: career prospects, modern amenities, proximity to anything resembling opportunity. For someone with remote income or a pension, it's a consideration. For someone needing to work locally, it's a dead end. Grubs is in Jackson County, northeastern Arkansas. Population under 400. It's barely a town, a cluster of houses, a few churches, farmland. Median price, $50,439. This is what $50,000 buys you: a single-story home, often on a large lot. You get space. You get quiet. You get property taxes under $200 a year. What you don't get: jobs, services, neighbors. Grubs has almost no local economy, no grocery store, no medical facility. The nearest town with services is 20 minutes away. But here's what's remarkable about Grubs. Prices went up. Last year, 1.7%. While other Delta towns crashed, Grubs held steady. Why? Because at $50,000, you're not competing with speculators. You're dealing with people who want a specific thing: rural isolation at a price that makes ownership possible on Social Security. Grubs is an option for exactly one type of person: someone who doesn't need anything a town provides and values land and silence over everything else. Dermott is in Chico County, deep South Arkansas, near Louisiana. Population under 2,000. Another cotton town dealing with decades of decline. Median price, $59,687. But that median is down. Way down. 16.5% in the last year. Houses that sold for $71,000 in 2024 now list for under $60,000. This is what crash looks like in slow motion. A brief pandemic surge, people seeking cheap rural property, followed by reality. Interest rates climbed, remote work hype faded, buyers disappeared. Dermott has basic infrastructure: schools, a library, local businesses. It's not abandoned, but it's aging. The population skews older. Young people leave. Birth rates decline. What Dermott represents is the risk of ultra-cheap housing. You're not buying an appreciating asset. You're buying a depreciating one, like a car. It provides shelter but loses value over time. For someone who needs shelter and nothing else, Dermott works. For someone expecting equity growth or easy resale, it's a trap. Eudora sits in Chico County at Arkansas's southern tip along the Mississippi River. Population under 2,000. close to Louisiana, far from everything else. Median price, $60,773. Eudora experienced the largest single-year price drop on this list, 16.3%, from $72,000 to $60,000 in 12 months. Why? Because even at pandemic-era peaks, demand was artificial. A handful of buyers created temporary pressure in a market that typically sees 3 sales a month. When those buyers stopped coming, prices corrected to levels supported by actual local demand, which is almost none. Eudora has proximity to Lake Chicot, the largest natural oxbow lake in North America. It has fertile farmland, it has civic institutions, and a downtown grid. What it doesn't have? Jobs, healthcare that isn't an hour away, broadband in most areas, economic activity that would justify anyone paying more than vehicle prices for houses. For buyers seeking debt-free ownership in the extreme rural isolation, Eudora delivers. For anyone else, the distance from opportunity makes it unworkable. Earl is in Crittenden County, 30 miles west of Memphis, population around 2,000. It's the closest town on this list to a major metro. Median price, $65,202. Proximity to Memphis should help. It means jobs are theoretically accessible. Interstate 40 and U.S. Route 64 make commuting possible. West Memphis is 15 minutes away. But prices are still falling, down 6.2% this year, down over 20% from the 2021 peak of $78,000. Why? Because commuting to Memphis for a $40,000 job while living in a town with limited services doesn't make financial sense when you can live in Memphis suburbs for twice the price and half the hassle. Earl's advantage is location. Its disadvantage is everything else. The town has struggled with depopulation, limited commercial activity, and the same challenges affecting the entire region. For buyers willing to bet on future growth as Memphis expands, Earl represents a low-cost entry point. For everyone else, it's a cheap house far from everything that makes housing valuable. Marvell is in Phillips County, deep in the Delta, population under 1,000, surrounded by farmland, levees, and the kind of flat landscape that stretches to the horizon. Median price, $67,522. Marvell has been declining since 2017. Prices peaked at $86,000 in 2021, then dropped for 4 straight years, nearly 13% in 2023 alone. This is a pattern across the Delta. Brief pandemic optimism followed by sustained decline as reality reasserted itself. Marvell's housing stock consists of older single-family homes, often with large lots. Many need work. Some are well-maintained by longtime owners who've been there for decades. The local economy is minimal. Agriculture is mechanized. Services are limited. Young people leave for college and don't return. What Marvell offers, land, space, low property taxes, and the kind of quiet that comes from living somewhere, population density is measured in people per square mile, not the reverse. What it doesn't offer, economic opportunity, modern infrastructure, or reasonable expectation that your investment will appreciate. Augusta sits along the White River in Woodruff County. Population around 2,000. It's a historic river town with 19th century architecture and a recognizable downtown. Median price, $73,693. Augusta is unusual. It's up 48% since 2010. Strong long-term appreciation for a Delta town. But recent trends are concerning. Down 10% in 2025 after peaking at $89,000 in 2023. What caused the surge? Location. Augusta sits on the White River. It has outdoor recreation. It has some tourism. It has character that purely agricultural towns lack. But that character hasn't been enough to sustain growth. The 10% drop in 2025 wiped out 2 years of gains. Augusta represents the best-case scenario for Delta towns. Historic charm, some economic diversity, reasonable infrastructure. And even here, prices are falling. For buyers, Augusta offers more amenities than most towns on this list. But the volatility suggests the market is still searching for a sustainable price level. Grady is in Lincoln County between Pine Bluff and Lake Village. Population under 500. It's tiny, rural, and isolated. Median price $74,122. But that price has crashed. Grady surged to $92,000 in 2021, a 17% jump in 1 year. Then reality hit. Prices have fallen every year since. This is the pandemic pattern in its purest form. A temporary spike driven by buyers seeking cheap rural property, followed by sustained decline as those buyers realized they couldn't actually live there. Grady sits near Bayou Bartholomew, the longest bayou in the world. It has natural beauty. It has space. What it doesn't have: jobs, services, broadband, proximity to anything. It's a place to own land cheaply, not a place to build a life unless your life requires almost nothing from the surrounding environment. Elaine is in Phillips County, population under 500. It's one of the smallest, most remote communities on this list. Median price, $74,350. Elaine is notable for one reason: prices went up 6.26% this year. While most Delta towns fell, Elaine climbed. Why? Impossible to say with certainty in markets this small. One or two sales can move medians dramatically. But the uptick suggests something. At ultra-low prices, demand stabilizes. When houses cost what cars cost, you're not dealing with investors. You're dealing with people who need shelter and have limited capital. Elaine offers exactly that. Basic shelter at prices that eliminate housing debt. Nothing else. No services, no jobs, just land and quiet. Forest City sits along Interstate 40 between Memphis and Little Rock. Population around 13,000. It's the largest town on this list. Median price, $74,542. Forest City has real infrastructure. Schools, healthcare, retail. It functions as a regional center for St. Francis County. It's not a dying hamlet. It's an actual small city. Prices have been remarkably stable, up 26.79% since 2010, steady, modest growth over 15 years. That's unusual for the Delta. Why? Location. Interstate 40 runs through town. Memphis is an hour west. Little Rock is an hour west. Forest City benefits from being between two metros, even if it's not close to either. For buyers seeking affordability with actual services, Forest City is the strongest option on this list. It's still cheap because it's still the Delta, but it's functional in ways most small towns aren't. Pine Bluff is the largest city on this list. Population over 40,000. It's a real city, the seat of Jefferson County, home to the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, with hospitals, schools, and commercial districts. Median price, $75,527. For a city of 40,000, $75,000 is absurdly cheap. But Pine Bluff has struggled. Population peaked decades ago. Industry left. Crime increased. The city has worked to revitalize downtown, but progress is slow. Still, prices are up 42% since 2010. The city offers something smaller towns don't: scale, services, institutions, employment in healthcare, education, and government. For buyers wanting affordability without complete rural isolation, Pine Bluff is worth considering. You get urban infrastructure at small-town prices. The trade-off is living in a city that peaked generations ago and hasn't figured out how to grow again. McGehee sits in Desha County along U.S. Route 65. Population around 3,000. It's a delta town that once served as a railroad hub and agricultural center. Median price, $76,158. McGehee has seen volatility. Prices climbed to $97,000 in 2022, then crashed, down 16.94% in 2025 alone. The pandemic surge and subsequent collapse in concentrated form. McGehee has more infrastructure than tiny delta towns: schools, services, a downtown with some activity. It's not thriving, but it's not abandoned. What McGehee represents is the middle tier of delta affordability, more functional than the smallest communities, but still dealing with population loss and limited economic prospects. For buyers, it's a compromise. Not as cheap as Grubs or Eudora, but more livable. Not as stable as Forest City, but more affordable. Stevens is in Ouachita County, about 10 miles north of Camden. Population under 1,000. It's a small railroad in Timbertown. Median price, $77,670. Stevens surged during the pandemic. Prices jumped 50% from 2010 to 2022, then crashed, down 14.14% in 2025. The sharpest recent drop on this list. What happened? The same thing that happened everywhere. Temporary demand evaporated. People who bought cheap rural property during lockdowns realized they couldn't actually live there. Stevens has proximity to Camden, a town of 10,000 with services and some employment. That proximity drove the surge. But proximity to a small declining town isn't worth what buyers thought it was. For someone wanting cheap housing near a slightly larger town, Stevens works. For investors expecting appreciation, it's a warning. Stamps is in Lafayette County near the Louisiana border. Population under 700. It's best known as the childhood home of Maya Angelou, who wrote about it in her memoirs. Median price, $77,846. Stamps peaked at $99,000 in 2022, then fell for 3 straight years, down 11.84% in 2025. Another pandemic surge followed by sustained decline. The historical significance matters. Angelou's connection gives Stamps identity beyond being another declining Delta town. For buyers drawn to literary history or civil rights legacy, that creates value beyond price. But historical significance doesn't create jobs, it doesn't bring services, it doesn't reverse population loss. Stamps offers cheap housing with historic weight. The challenge is the same everywhere. Without economic activity, cheap housing stays cheap. Swifton is in Jackson County along U.S. Route 67. Population a few hundred. It's a quiet railroad town in northeast Arkansas. Median price $79,596. Swifton is the most expensive town on this list. But expensive is relative. We're still talking under $80,000. Prices fell 4.2% this year. Not a crash, but a correction. The market is finding equilibrium at levels supported by actual demand. Swifton has proximity to Newport and Walnut Ridge, small towns with some services. That makes it slightly more viable than the most isolated communities. What Swifton represents is the ceiling of ultra-cheap Arkansas housing. This is as expensive as the market gets when you remove growth prospects, job opportunities, and proximity to metros. 15 towns. $47,000 to $79,000 median, individual listings from $1,500 to $20,000. So what do we do with this? These aren't investment properties. They're not starter homes in up-and-coming neighborhoods. They're houses in places where the economy stopped and never restarted. The American housing crisis is real. Homes in thriving markets are genuinely unaffordable. Young people are locked out. Corporations are buying everything. But there's another America. An America where houses cost what cars cost, where you can own property outright on savings most people have. The catch: you can't earn a living there. You can't access modern healthcare easily. You can't participate in the economy that drives growth. These towns are cheap because almost no one wants to live there. The demand collapsed. The jobs disappeared. The young people left. For 99% of you, this isn't relevant. You need a job market. You need services. You need proximity to opportunity. But for the 1%, the retiree on a fixed income who refuses to spend 70% on rent, the remote worker who wants out of the rat race entirely, the artist who needs silence more than stimulation, these towns offer something. Freedom from housing debt in exchange for accepting isolation from everything that makes modern American life convenient. It's not a solution to the housing crisis. It's a reminder that while everyone fights over condos in Miami and apartments in Austin, there's a whole country sitting quietly, waiting for anyone willing to take the trade. If this analysis gave you a different perspective on American housing, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, could you live in a town where your house costs less than a truck? I genuinely want to know. Subscribe for more deep dives into the economic realities everyone else ignores. See you in the next one.